My cancer journey started in 2007. I was reading this book, Death Be Not Proud by John Gunther, and my 14-year-old son, Jack, was down the hall sleeping. And this is a story of a 16-year-old boy who had cancer in 1949, I think, late 40s. And I wondered, why am I reading this book? And it was sad and scary. And I got a few pages in, and I read the name Dr. Max Gerson. And so I kept reading, and I found out he was a doctor in New York City who was treating people who had cancer. And I said, I've got to find out who this man is. And the next morning I went on the internet and I started reading about him and ordered a book that he had written. And I knew at that moment that if I ever got cancer, I knew what I was going to do. So a year later, I was seeing a very famous doctor in New York City who was treating me for being stressed out and overweight, and decided I needed estrogen to lose weight, and he gave me pills and he put a patch on my arm. And about probably 6 months later, he would check me every 3 months, and about 6 months later, I had an ultrasound on my whole body, and on my right breast there was a lesion. And he called me. I was at the post office in Kingston, New York, and he said, "You have a lesion on your breast, you need to go get an MRI." And I was standing by the garbage can, and I ripped the patch off because I knew exactly what had caused it: stress and too much estrogen. And got an MRI. They said, "Yes, you have a lesion on your breast." And I said to my husband, "Bye, I'm going back to California from New York. I'm going to do the Gerson therapy." And I went to an underground Gerson clinic in Southern California. And I learned how to do the Gerson therapy, which is 13 glasses of juice a day, 3 vegetarian meals, and 5 coffee enemas a day. And met a couple of people at the clinic who ended up coming to my house for 6 months, or they came for about 4 months. And we did the Gerson therapy together. This woman had breast cancer, and her husband did, as I recall, most of the juicing and most of the cooking, which was really great. And I stayed on the Gerson therapy for 6 months, and then I looked completely different. I felt great, and decided to just quit because I didn't know that you needed to actually do it for at least 2 years. So went back to my old habits, eating all kinds of different foods, and not that they were that unhealthy, but wine and ice cream and things like that. And then in April of 2015, probably in March, I was spotting and decided, vaginal spotting, and I decided I better go see my gynecologist. So I didn't have one at the time, but I found a new one and went to see her, met her for the first time. She said, "Hello, why are you here?" And I said, "I'm spotting." She said, "Well, it could be bladder cancer." I'm like, oh, what? I did not think it could be cancer at all. So anyway, that's how we sort of met. And she did a test, like a biopsy, was a biopsy, and sent it off to a lab in her lab in the Bay Area in California. And there were abnormal cells, so they sent it on to UCSF, and they did some more studying of it. And a week later, she called me back in, April 12th, 2015, and she started talking. And she said there were abnormal cells, so we sent it back. We sent it to another lab for further testing, and you have either endometrial something or some kind of carcinoma. And I'm like, wait a minute, wait, slow down, slow down. I need to write this down. And here are my notes from that day. She hadn't said cancer yet, but she was saying abnormal cells and carcinoma. And so I knew I needed to focus, and I was all by myself. And so I just started writing. She started getting annoyed because I was wanting to write down every word that she said. And she finally said, you have cancer. It's like, whoa. Okay, you could be a little nicer about it, ma'am. Anyway, then so she let me write all these things down, endometrial carcinoma. They weren't sure exactly what it was at that point. And she said, you need to go to a gynecological oncologist, and they're going to remove your uterus, they're going to take out your fallopian tubes, and take out your ovaries, they're going to check your lymph nodes for microscopic spread, they're going to stage you or debulk you. And that means that they're going to take out this entire piece of fat called the omentum, so they can really see what's going on, and they're either going to open you up or do it laparoscopically. Anyway, she just went on and on about what I was going to do, what I needed to do. It was a diagnosis and treatment, and then, you're going to get chemo and radiation. I'm like, what the heck is going on? And, shaking by that point. I still knew Max Gerson. I knew that I was going to do that. But I did go out to my car and cried and wished that somebody was with me. She did recommend a gynecologic oncologist, and I called and made an appointment to see them, which I did a few days later. And he turned out to be a really great guy. And but he had to tell me the conventional treatment. And he was very kind about it. And we talked about getting a hysterectomy and chemotherapy. I said, probably not going to do that. That took him aback a little bit. And anyway, in the meantime, or right around that time, somehow, maybe it was just before this diagnosis, I had watched the Truth About Cancer docuseries, and I remembered this, or I had it, and I pulled it out and watched it. That's, I think, probably how it happened. And I watched it, and I found a doctor, Patrick Vickers, in Mexico. And so I called him right away because he gave the Gerson protocol. And so I talked with him, and he was great. And he said, get the hysterectomy, get it out, get the tumor out. Your body will have less work to do to heal. So and this all happened within 2 weeks. I went, talked to him, scheduled the surgery, and went down to Mexico with my sister and my best friend and her daughter. And her daughter, 2 daughters. There were 5 of us that went down. They took me down to Dr. Vickers' clinic down there. And I spent 3 weeks doing the Gerson protocol, plus a lot of adjuvant, I think now is how you pronounce it. Things like hyperbaric oxygen, Laetrile, IV vitamin C, something where they took my blood out. Somebody came from a lab, took a couple of cups of blood, I think, took it back to their lab. separated the red and white blood cells, came back, gave me my red blood cells. I'm like, I hope these are my blood cells. And kept the white and did something to them and increased them and put them back in. And there were castor oil enemas, and it was wild. Had a big healing reaction right off the bat, which I knew was a good thing, even though I felt terrible, and spent more and more time in bed just trying to get through everything that we were doing, that I was doing. But I knew I was doing exactly the right thing, so I was very happy to be there. And I was there 3 weeks and then went home, and thank goodness for my sister and my friends who came and helped me juice. I was doing 13 glasses of juice a day and 3 vegetarian meals and 5 coffee enemas, and could not have done that without the support of family and friends. In fact, when I was sort of underway and then I was alone, it was challenging to do that, even though I had stopped doing everything else in my life and was just doing that. So that was almost 18 months ago, and I feel like a different person. I had my blood work checked several times in the last year and a half, and everything seems to be in the right direction. I am in a hotel right now and can't wait to get home because Tuesday I start up again. And I've been away from home for a few weeks now, and I crave my juices and my salads and vegetables and baked potatoes and my oatmeal, and can't wait to get back to it. It's very moving to be with a group of people that are starting a revolution. And I am honored to be a part of that. I tell people on a regular basis when I'm asked about what I have done to go right to the truth about cancer and to watch the documentary, the series, and there are answers. Telling them about Chris Wark, who was here today, and that you don't have to rush into anything. You have time. There are alternatives. It's pretty easy, I think, for people to get on that conveyor belt of conventional medicine and not be able to get off. And I just say thank you so much that I read Death Be Not Proud, and I learned about Max Gerson and knew the Gerson protocol cold before anything happened to me. And going to those appointments, especially with the gynecologist, was terrifying, even though I knew. So I can only imagine what it's like for somebody that didn't have some sense of what they would do. And I have a number of friends who have been on the conventional medicine conveyor belt, and my heart breaks for them. Now, they do have a 50% chance of not having it recur, but they still have, or I don't know what the actual percentage is, but it's pretty big. And not looking at what they're eating, not understanding that our bodies are really the only thing that are going to heal us from something like cancer or any chronic disease, really. And what the body wants is the medicine, which is the food. And with that food, with the proper food, we can heal. With real food, we can heal ourselves. And it's so sad to me to see people that don't. And that's part of my mission in life now, is to spread this message. And people don't want to hear it. People say, a friend of mine will say, I have a friend who was just diagnosed with breast cancer, and I told her about you, and she would like to talk to you. But then we set up a time, and she can't come, and then we set up another time, and she can't. And there's just a big disconnect between, I've got to do what my doctor tells me and get on that conveyor belt. And I know that there's a possibility, Cheryl, that what you're saying could have some validity, but I really feel like I need to go in this direction. I think the first thing that I would say is that you have time to make a decision. You have time to do some research. And I can help you, I can guide you to research. I can show you, and I'd love to watch it with you, the Truth About Cancer docuseries. I'd love to introduce you to Chris Wark and his very clear path called Square One, where he says you have time, and then he walks you through the entire process of the healing process and what's available, what you can do. I mean, right there, the answers are there. So there's not much more to say. And then I would tell her that I'm doing the Gerson therapy and what that involves, and that really I think what everybody is saying who's doing this normal way of healing, not the conventional conveyor belt cancer industry, but the natural way of healing is that you need to flood your body with nutrients and you need to detoxify. And with that prescription, your body can come back not just to where it was before, but better than ever, which is how I feel. Better than ever.